Alright guys, it's your boy Mullah. This week got that fire. And we back with another one. I told y'all this is about the MCU. If you don't know nothing about the MCU, this ain't for you. So now we about to check out how many new different timelines did they just create. What's going on up in here, Loki? Wow.
Crush, I'm Ryan Airy. Loki
What
episode
up,
2
Ryan?
ended with Randy Loki sending time reset charges to multiple points in the timeline. Now, just by counting the jars and the times and places we see on screen, the time jars are sent to at least 22 different points in time. Each of these
22?
charges creates a nexus event, a split from the space-time continuum that alters the flow of reality and creates a new timeline. Normally, the TVA would step in and reset a new timeline before it can get out of hand, as noted by this red line. Like they say in the episode,
it's when the TVA can no longer reset the nexus event.
So the red line is the point of no return, like the windmill in Back to the Future 3. Once a variant timeline is too different, it can no longer be reset. Then it becomes a separate universe, a tangent reality, part of a new multiverse. So essentially, Randy has created the multiverse that the Timekeepers have repressed for so long. We have a video coming out that speculates about her master plan, so subscribe to check that one out. But now let's go through these new time divergences and speculate about these new timelines that she's created. Some of these events are very important in the history of the MCU, while others are actual historical events worth noting. On the big screen, we see Nowhere. That's the severed head of a Celestial where the Collector has his headquarters. This could mean a number of things. Maybe Thanos failed to take the Reality Stone, or maybe that Peter had the courage to kill Gamora, or maybe the Guardians fell apart here before they could ever be formed.
Why didn't it have to get made?
Then, on Ravonna Renslayer's display, we see a ton of new divergent realities. March 31st, 1492 is a sad day in history, the day Spain exiled all of its Jews to Portugal. Here we have Vormir in 2301. Now remember, Vormir is the planet that contains the Soul Stone. It's easy to get mixed up with the different timelines, but here's the current state of this planet. In the current MCU 2023 timeline, Thanos has destroyed the Infinity Stones, so they no longer exist. Steve Rogers did travel back in time to return the Soul Stone on Vormir, but this simply restored the 2014 timeline.
In that reality, it never left.
Actually, Marvel hasn't officially said what this means yet, like if that timeline fades away or it's part of like a mini multiverse where various timelines are allowed to exist alongside the sacred timeline as long as they don't veer toward the red line. Hopefully Loki clears all that up. But the last time we saw Vormir, Thanos had just sacrificed Gamora, and he'd also destroyed the stones. So in the year 2301, there's no longer a Soul Stone for the Red Skull to guard. So either the energy of the Soul Stone reconstituted itself into a new stone, or Johann Schmidt's been stuck on this planet for centuries. I'm guessing the reset charge frees him from his prison and allows him, or maybe some new Guardian, to wreak havoc across the universe. Nebula also called Vormir a place at the center of celestial existence. So this could have repercussions that we can't even understand. And by the way, this event takes place on my birthday. This one says 1551 in Thornton, USA, which is weird because the USA wouldn't exist for 200 more years. So maybe the variant timelines are already starting to branch off and cause chaotic variances in the timeline. This one's weird. On November 22nd, 1999, a man named Wayman Terry Farley passed away in Cookeville, Tennessee. So maybe this person was a relative of someone who works on the show. Then there's Asgard in 2004, which is very interesting. At this time, Thor would have been the stupid, greedy, cruel boy who loves to fight first and ask questions later. Kind of like Russell Crowe, but in space.
You walked right through my shot, mate! Do you know who I am?
Oh, excuse me, I was just...
So maybe this charge was intended to kill Thor and Odin and create an alternate timeline where Loki rules Asgard. Or maybe it somehow freed Hela and made Ragnarok happen before its time. This would mean that Thor, who would lack the wisdom he gained in the movie Ragnarok, would be unable to stop Hela and she would rule Asgard and probably the Nine Realms. Also, this would mean that Loki would never attempt to take over the Earth, so there are no Avengers. No Avengers means no Ultron, which means no Sokovia Accords, means no Civil War, and nobody to stop Hela from conquering the planet. Except Hydra. Now, if I could watch an alternate timeline movie where Hydra freedom fighters go up against Hela's Asgardian army of the dead, that's a film I would pay money to see. Sakaar in 1984, which, by the way, 80s Sakaar would have been a kickin' party. Now, this could have been the year when the Grandmaster arrived and started the Contest of Champions.
On any other world, I'd be like millions of years old. But here on Sakaar,
Or this could be when Korg led his failed revolution.
Oh, well, I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up.
except for my mum and her boyfriend, who I hate.
So maybe instead of that, Korg's revolution was successful and he was able to create the kind of utopia he envisioned in the ashes of Asgard.
It will become a haven for all peoples and aliens of the universe.
Hala in the year 51. Hala, of course, is the home planet of the Kree we saw in Captain Marvel. The Kree are a group of space a-holes who've been fighting in various wars for centuries. I'm wondering if this date could be targeting the Supreme Intelligence. In the movies, it's portrayed by Anne Hathaway, the person that Veers admires most. But in the comics, it's a giant head in a jar. The Supreme Intelligence is formed by a collection of the greatest minds in Kree history, and it rules every aspect of Kree society. In the MCU, we never find out how old the Supreme Intelligence is. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we do see the Kree genetically manipulate Paleolithic humans, but that's as far back as their history goes on the TV shows and movies. So what if this charge prevents the Supreme Intelligence from being created? Then the Kree no longer win wars around the galaxy and their civilization is doomed. Or this charge could have gone back to their earliest days of their fight with the Skrulls, to help the shapeshifters gain the advantage in their long war. This would see the Skrulls become the galaxy-conquering race that we know from the comics. Eventually, they would have conquered the Earth centuries before Steve Rogers volunteered to have Kool-Aid burst shot into his veins. Just beneath Hala is Xandar in the year 1001. Now remember, the Kree were in 1,000 years war with Xandar. The Nova Corps eventually won that war and prevented anger Ronan the Accuser and led him to inadvertently form the Guardians of the Galaxy. So let's say this charge prevents the war from starting. Boring. Or maybe it lets the Kree decimate Xandar right away. This would allow the Kree Empire to spread throughout the universe, but more importantly, it would prevent the Guardians from forming, so there would be no one to stop Ego from initiating the expansion. 2005 Beijing, China could affect the upbringing of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. As we saw in the latest trailer, the villain, the Mandarin, raised Shang-Chi to be a warrior. Now, eventually, he realizes his father's a villain and turns against him, but that may not be so in this reality. Maybe he stays by the Mandarin's side to help him rule, or maybe this charge somehow undoes the Mandarin's criminal empire. If you remember, Tony Stark was originally kidnapped by the Mandarin's organization, the Ten Rings. No Ten Rings kidnapping, no Iron Man, and Thanos is able to ground the universe down to its very last atom. Then here in 1382, we see an event on Ego. Remember, Ego is both a person and a place. Now this is interesting because Ego has a very long history. He's a Celestial like the giants we saw in the Guardians flashback. But he was also a Celestial that was left home alone. It took him eons to form his consciousness and a body, and then even longer to form different bodies that could travel the universe. What if 1382 is right about the time he figured out how to turn himself into a person? But this time charge prevents this from happening. No Ego means no smushing, which means no Peter Quill and no Guardians of the Galaxy. This means that Ronan would have recovered the Power Stone from Morag, given it to Thanos, and then he would have quickly used that stone to acquire the others. Not to mention he still would have helped Ronan destroy Xandar. But speaking of Thanos, this event is listed as Titan in 1982. Now obviously Titan was devastated long before 82.
Back in 82, I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile. Are you serious? I'm dead serious.
But remember, Thanos still used Titan as a rendezvous point.
If I were to reach our rendezvous on Titan,
so maybe this husk of a planet could have been his headquarters, and it would have been the perfect place to raise Gamora and Nebula. Maybe something happened that makes them turn against Thanos when they were children, so that he would eventually kill him and take his place. Or, even better, maybe some event changes Thanos' heart and makes him realize that his life's goal is short-sighted and he should make the world a better place.
Hey, my name is Lucas Lee Tyson. If you're looking...
We also see Niflheim, one of the 9 realms that we briefly glimpsed at in Thor the Dark World. This is the land of the dead, where Odin banished Hela, and where she killed the Asgardian Valkyries. So this charge could have freed Hela, kickstarting her conquest of Asgard.
Too hard.
Or
you want to
maybe
kill
in this
everything?
timeline, the Valkyries are successful and destroy her. This would have made the Valkyries the greatest heroes of Asgard, beloved even more so than Odin.
But she
Even
killed them
possible
all.
that this could have led to an Asgardian civil war, where the Valkyries try to wrest control from warmongering Odin and control the 9 realms for themselves. We also see Jotunheim, birthplace of Loki. Now, few significant events have taken place on Jotunheim. Obviously, Thor goes to that planet to bash some heads as payback for them ruining his Milky Anthos Sierra. Maybe, in this reality, he kills King Laufey and starts another war between Asgard and the Frost Giants. Or
yeah.
maybe in this timeline, Luffy decides not to abandon his dwarf son on the rocks.
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes.
Instead, he raises Loki to be king, and the god of mischief's cunning make him into a great asset to the Frost Giant kingdom. He works out secret ways in and out of Asgard and assassinates Odin in his sleep. So the Frost Giants would conquer Asgard, then Earth, and rule the 9 realms. But the most depressing, weird, and mind-bending alteration is 1947 New York. This is when Steve Rogers decided to stay behind and have his dance with Peggy. Now, we do have a video coming out about that reality and how it ties into the Netflix shows and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so make sure you subscribe to see that one. But basically, when he stayed behind, Steve either created another timeline or he lived quietly in the background of the MCU's history, which is dumb. See, Loki Episode 1 showed what appeared to be a Peggy Carter lookalike being arrested. This implies that the TVA stepped in to ruin Steve's happy ending. Yeah. But here, okay, stay with me. What if this time charge actually somehow inspired Steve to stay behind in the past? Like maybe he was planning on staying, but he got cold feet, and then this charge was the catalyst to him staying behind and creating a new timeline. That would mean that all of these events of the show Loki have essentially already happened. These characters already live in the multiverse that Randy just created. Or maybe this charge prevents Steve from staying behind and he returns to the main MCU and Sam never becomes Captain America. And this can have even more negative consequences. If Steve is living in the background of the MCU, then it's possible he was influencing events from behind the scenes all along. What? Maybe he tipped off Fury about Project Insight, or he leaked information about the Winter Soldier to Natasha. Heck, maybe he made sure that Howard's old journals ended up with Tony to help him create a new element to save his life. Now, this is really going to mess with your head. Maybe none of these are alternate timelines. Remember when Mobius said,
"That's how it is. That's how it was.
That's how it always be."
So maybe Lady Loki messing with the timelines actually created the timeline that we already know. Maybe she spurs on Ego to find new life, starts the Kree-Xandar War, helps Thanos find Nebula, and then helped him find the Infinity Stones. Maybe the original MCU would have been a tidy, well-ordered place if Lady Loki, the goddess of mischief, had never interfered. See, we just don't know what all these consequences are, which is what makes this so much fun. Let me know your best timeline theories down in the comments.
Well, man, this MCU timeline, man, it's deep. It's deep, man. So, if you don't know nothing about the MCU, it ain't for you. So it's your boy Mullah. This week got that 5. We'll be back with another one. And I'm out of here.